In the wake of making my Bastion during my Overwatch obsession, I decided I wanted to make a different prop from the game. As many of you know, Overwatch is a popular fast-paced, team-based, multiplayer shooter developed by Blizzard Entertainment. Among its array of characters is one Mei Ling, who wields this very cool and fancy ice blaster. Its sort of bulbous design and glowing bits made me feel like I wanted to hold it in my hands and see how it felt. So I modeled it in Fusion. It had many pieces, but as I modeled each one, I got more and more excited. The biggest obstacle was the large clear orb at the back of the blaster, but I found these holiday ornaments that can be opened up that ended up being pretty perfect. I ended up putting one sphere in the other to make it look as though the outer orb was containing a separate energy inside. I frosted the interior of the inner orb and combined it all. The outside of the orb was the perfect size for the size of the blaster itself, which, by the way, is pretty large. From here, I started printing the main housing of the blaster one half at a time. And here's what the orb looks like dry-fitted into the body. Once the two halves were glued together, I started the process of using Bondo, which is a two-part polyester resin system that hardens pretty fast and then can be sanded. Once complete, that got primed with a gray primer, and this is what the orb looks like prior to installing it. Lots of ugly seams, right? It looks bad. But once it's in the sub-assembly, you can't really see those. Luckily, the original design from the blaster included this metal strip that let me hide all that stuff. Here's what the main body looks like painted, but before I added wear. And here it is all together. Getting this done made me feel way better about the rest of the project. So I let the printing begin. Here's a nice knolled shot of parts printed with some primed, and a couple more. Like with the main body, Bondo was used to close the seams on the handle too. It looks pretty good post-Bondo, right? Then the battery cover goes on to hide the battery during use. And here's what the grip looks like dry fit. And some close-ups of the areas where you will be seeing lights when I assemble it. Here you can see more of the body dry fit. The main barrel, which was too tall for my printer to create whole, had to be printed in two parts. And you can clearly see the seam now. I made it at an angle so it would be less obvious later. And so I applied Bondo once again to cover the seams. In hindsight, this might have been too much Bondo, but that's okay. The sanding begins and I can get that pretty smooth. But you can see how fine the sanded Bondo is though, so it's best to wear some form of protection while you're sanding so you limit how much of that stuff you breathe in. For the underside of the barrel, I used the Buffable Metallizer Lacquer by Model Master. I used this on all the parts that would get scratched up so you could see the metal paint come through. Here's what the paint looked like for the barrel. The metal finish was perfect. Let's see some other painted parts, shall we? Like the canister, the grip, and some other bits that will get attached later. I loved that cherry red. This is the center of the blaster, and you can see how that empty space in the middle is the perfect spot to store wiring as it travels throughout the body of the blaster. I'm starting to glue these different parts together. You can see the black orb in the printed reference on the wall. As I was working, I realized that I was missing a pretty important piece, the interior barrel. I took some design liberty here and added a bunch of holes to show how the blaster can not just fire ice shards, but also it can put out a cloud of ice as well. Added a bit of wash and installed the inner barrel like this. You can see the blue electronics wire there too. And here's the final result. Check out some of the close-ups of the wear. Here's that inner barrel. You can see straight through to the orb in the back. Now let's pop some batteries into this bad boy. Show you what it looks like. Let's shut off some lights for full effect. You can see the main orb lights up. These side lights come on. The gauge on the side lights up. And the front sight lights up too. It was the perfect prop for my daughter when she cosplayed as Mei at Emerald City Comic Con. But that'll be another story. I love this thing, and I'm so happy to have gotten to share it with you. Check out some of my other builds on my channel, Forge Pop.